Hi, this is Rob Sheen with the Source Conference, and I'm here with Raf Los from Optiv, and he's going to be keynoting at the Source Phoenix Conference in Mesa coming up at the end of February, and it's on February 28th and March 1st. And the title of his keynote is How to Lose Friends and Alienate People. So, welcome, Raf.
Hey, good to be on. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Um, so that's kind of an interesting topic, and I know sometimes I've spoken to you about this before. Sometimes you say that you're sometimes a little controversial. So I've actually heard you talk, and I've not heard you say anything that I think is particularly controversial. But I'm curious
That's
what you
because we
mean
get
like that,
along.
and tell us a little bit about what your talk's going to be.
I think the fact that we don't argue too much is the fact that you're also a contrarian and perhaps you've been in the industry long enough to know better. No, I mean, look, I like to play. I've sort of grown into playing the contrarian lately, and the whole talk is play off of how to make friends and influence people, except the Simon Pegg version is how to lose friends and alienate people. And I think his is much funnier, so I figure I'd just rip off his title and make it infosec. But the whole point of this is, I think I've probably had entirely too many conversations, and if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen me do it there and other places and on the podcast that I run, where we're talking about the answer to security's shortcomings is more this, more that, just more, more, more. And I think I think that's wrong. And we berate our users. We think we think training and education is going to solve our problems. We think this and that. There's just misconceptions all along the way. And I've been kind of elbows deep in it for about 20 years in one way or another. God, it's been a long time. Running crazy firewall configs all the way back, but that I think that there's some nuances we're missing, right? And so these, I think broadly the security community is starting to get it. I hope so. But yeah, the whole talk is basically around if you're doing security in the enterprise, here's how not to get people to hate you and lose your job.
Well, that's important considering the average CISO seems to stick around these days for less than 18 months before they go to the next thing or push to the next thing. So,
Well,
um,
true story.
I similar like I find stuff like that kind of befuddling because I don't know how you can even ramp up a program in that time, let alone be kind of really fully hitting your stride. Like just as you'd be getting going, they're like, "Oh, time to go." It doesn't make much sense to me. Um, so here's just kind of a general question: what do you see as just you've been in the industry for a long time, similar amount of time as I have actually. What do you see as the biggest challenge in security today?
Uh, I think it's a nice way of calling us old there, Rob.
We are old,
Biggest,
man.
I think our biggest challenge continues to be that we lag the technology curve. Security is still not built in. Look, we can blame engineering, we can blame requirements, we can blame quote the business. But if I swear I hear somebody say that one more time, I'm going to lose it. But security is still not engineered into the product, into the thing. Um, and so it doesn't matter what we bolt on or add to it. We're going to struggle, and I get it. There's plenty of places where you can't engineer your way. So even if security is involved from second zero, software bugs still happen, right? Accidents still happen. I was telling somebody this analogy of you have a teenager, you want to get them to drive safely right before you hand them the keys to your car. And so you put them through safety school. You put them through driver simulators. You teach them how to, swear that they're going to use their seatbelts. No drinking and driving, no friends in the car, no distractions, no cell phones. Wrap them in bubble wrap. Teach them to drive only 5 miles an hour. And as they're sitting at a stop sign, a truck comes out of nowhere and broadsides them. Right? What are you going to do about that? Nothing, because crap happens. And I think that's the part of security that we can worry about, that we actually can do something about, right? From the perspective of can we make ourselves better? But our biggest challenge continues to be that we are in the. I just had a great talk recently. Chris McChesney, the guy that wrote Rise for Franklin Covey, talks about the kind of the four was it the four disciplines of execution. Like security is living in the whirlwind. Like everything we do is like, oh my God, this thing's on fire. Oh, this thing's on fire. We don't actually have time. We're not built to have time to think, to reflect, to try to again engineer safety and security into the process or into the thing, so that we're always going to be chasing it, and we're never diminishing the whirlwind. So look, I could talk about this for an hour, but I'll save it for the talk. But that's I think that's our biggest thing is we haven't figured out how to tame the whirlwind.
That's you brought up a bunch of good points. I was taking some notes along the way. So one that kind of struck home is that you mentioned that the tech's not really engineered to be secure, and here's something I noticed in the news again recently, which I found fascinating. ATMs are now being jackpotted in the United States. And I saw a talk where that actually was described in detail in 2010, 7 years ago. So how do we convince the right people to make these? Well, it's related though, right?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Clearly somebody could have done the right assessment after that talk, figured out, because some of the vectors are absolutely the things that were described in that talk.
Yes, true story. Yep. So look, this is the lesson for us is, and again, so this is where I'm gonna sound maybe a little nutty, but this is where somebody looked at it at the time, and this is relative. I think this relates to the processor issue we're seeing with Meltdown, Spectre, and all the other related things. Somebody looked at it at the time, did a concerted risk analysis, and said, you know what? Yes, the potential is massive, but the probability is low because factors X, Y, and Z. And I don't know this for a fact, by the way, but I'm speculating, right?
Yeah,
like we all do, but that's, I think it's fair to say that somebody looked at it and said, there's 1 million ATMs out there. We say we have 1,000 ATMs. They would each cost $1,000 to fix, or we could keep an eye on it, and if things start to go sideways, deploy countermeasures, right? I mean, if this actually starts emptying ATMs in the U.S. at large scale, I'm sure the losses will be big. What is that against the loss, or the cost, we'll call it, right? Because it's still a loss, but it's a cost. If they would have made the fix or done something different 10 years ago, and what's the impact of that money that they didn't spend on security over the last 10 years, right? I mean, look, it's a risk decision, and I think somebody hopefully made it and said, I'm going to take that run, and I maybe they came out on top, maybe they didn't, but that's the thing. I think that when we talk about, it's part of the contrarian in me, is like, now I'm looking at things a little bit differently. I've spent some time with a couple of business level kind of coach people, and that's one of the things I'm starting to learn is, a duck is a duck except when it's not a duck. And so everything, it feels like, wow, we should have first off, like the stages that we go through, right? First off, oh, somebody should have known. Like, we should have known this. This should have been fixed. Okay. Second stop is, okay, who's the idiot that wrote this stupid code, or that let this vulnerability go? And you go down the list of like the same reactions we have to everything every single time. And if you stop and think about it for like 30 seconds and go, let's put this in business school terms. And I get it. When our identities, when our stuff, our critical information is at risk, our credit histories, our bank accounts, our health records, we feel about it differently. But from the corporate perspective, but from the risk decision perspective, you got to understand that emotion has to be taken out of that equation. Yeah. And so it's very much a balancing equation with dollars, right, on either side. And you go, okay, if I implement this fix for something that may happen, and if it happens, they, my analysts tell me it'll cost me X, or and now it'll cost me X, or maybe it happens later and it costs me Y. Well, if I don't spend the X over the next however long it takes before that Y thing actually happens, that X makes X plus some number, right? Something, right? X times 100, X times 1,000. So when it comes down to, oh, that day has come where the chickens have come home to roost, and we're looking at it going, okay, that thing happened. How much has that money that we would have spent in the beginning accrued over time? How much profit has it made us? How much has it enabled the business to do other things that we can now say, you know what, I make that decision again.
Sure.
And I think that's the part that breaks security professionals' brains often, is the answer sometimes is,
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with you on because I'm definitely, consultant first, security first, and second. I definitely believe in understanding, what all the things you were saying make perfect sense. But, the one thing I would kind of throw out there is, maybe they should have at least been kind of proactively as they're making new up ATM machines, rolling out some fixes to kind of gradually solve it in a way that doesn't maybe cost $1,000 per machine to do it reactively. And then maybe I just like to see a little bit more proactive,
Well,
fixes
so
and
so I don't know the answer to this, but is
yeah,
this what's impacted, right? So are brand new ATM machines impacted, or is this like what uh, oh hell, I forgot his name, um, that did it on stage at in Vegas. Wow, brain fart. Anyway, sorry. When we
Barnaby
saw
Jack.
that, yeah, Barnaby's. I
Yeah,
was thinking Jack Barnaby. Yeah, when he did it on stage, right? Using I think it was a Windows 98 ATM from like the early 70s or something, right? It's something ancient, I think, at the time, from what I remember. Um, what's the lifespan of an ATM? I bet it's more than 10 years,
right.
probably, right? So when that thing was first discovered, those were already out in the wild, or when this thing was first discovered, or when that the realization came, say 10 years ago, were, have we replaced all those yet? Are they still out there? Are we putting new ones out with that issue? So if we're putting new ones out with this issue, yeah, then I've got a problem with it, right? Because the fix probably isn't. It's not like massive. You're not going to retrofit stuff. If you can engineer it into the product, odds are it's not going to be a huge problem, right? Because you just build it in. So ignorance, I think, would if we have evidence to support that, would be a bad thing. But if it's simply like like in the rest of the world where some of these devices are out there for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years duty cycles, and it's a vuln that was in there 10 years ago when it was engineered. We found it 2 years later. It's still going to be out there for another 10 years before it gets replaced. So, poking at it now is like, we get it, but you're not going to do much about it unless there's a serious catastrophic potential, right? So, I don't know. It's a big equation that I think is very complex, and it takes us. It requires pause, and I know that doesn't win me friends on the security side of the thing. Um, but sometimes I think it's a good thing to just shut up for a second, look at the business side of the equation, and realize that we are still in some cases largely missing the boat on these big mega breaches because our analysis is through a lens that we only possess and
Hmm.
that the rest of the world doesn't subscribe to, which is where we start imposing draconian measures on you can only you can't browse at all, you can't hit anything other than the corporate website, you can only log in from this and this time, you can't install software, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And it's in human nature, people get grumpy about that and they'll go, yeah, watch this, I'll bring my own thing to work,
Yep.
right? And then you start seeing, and now you've lost the audience, which is awful.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting trade-off. I definitely think those kinds of things lead to people finding ways to circumvent it for sure. Now, one thing I like, so all my comments are definitely coming from the filter of I've seen some crazy stuff over the years, and I've done a lot of like threat modeling classes where I'll have people live in the room showing me their actual stuff, and I'll be like, oh wow, you're doing that, and that's happened like almost every class. We find some like actual vulnerability that they need to go fix afterwards, and so I look at it from the filter of I've seen where the dirty laundry is, and I've seen where the skeletons are buried.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of know that the ATM thing is just merely representative of a
Sure.
number of things, a vast swath of things on the inside that often don't get protected properly, and that if somebody really truly was a dedicated attacker, they'd crush it in a second. So I
Oh
kind of
yeah,
see it as
absolutely.
like some of these things that we think of, we put business risk of it. It's probably down here somewhere. It's no. If it actually gets exploited, and it will if someone notices, it's going to
Yeah,
be massive. So
yeah.
how do we get
And
that message across to the right people that can make those decisions?
well, and so don't get me wrong. I've been a part of. I've worked on the enterprise side long enough, and I've worked for a product vendor for a while too. So, and I've watched in both cases decisions get made that the security professional in me was literally screaming into a phone on mute, like, "What in the hell are you doing?" Right? But it's like, look, do I ship this feature that the customer wants, or do we take that money and that developer time and apply a patch to it, which does nothing incrementally, and our competition will kick our butts, right? It's like I,
Right.
part of me understands why they make that decision, but you go, oh, you put your head in your hands and you cry a little, and then you just move on. But how do we make that? How do we change that? I've got some ideas. I don't want to give everything away, but I think it goes back to understanding human nature and human behavior, and quite frankly, understanding goals and objectives of an organization or whatever it is that you're trying to that you're there for. If you work in an enterprise, you don't your job really, your job title says security, but security isn't a thing in a large company like that. They're not producing security. They're not the stock price isn't garnered by how well they security, right? It's a product, it's a service, it's an advice, it's a TV show, it's a movie, it's a widget, whatever, and your job is to make sure that that is as safe and quote secure as possible, within the bounds and ramifications and the rails that you're given, right? So you have to understand sort of there's a broader context to it, and I'm seeing colleagues kind of get that, which is awesome. But it's been a long road to get here. And you mentioned threat modeling. I'll simply say this: I have a little sliver that I'll insert probably during the talk on threat modeling where we talk about it. Very few people it's not that there's not really a wrong way to do threat modeling. There's lots and lots of interesting and complex ways. There's simple ways. But just do something. Please understand what your threat model is, because I promise you, there are companies right now that are looking at the Spectre and Meltdown problem, looking at the 20 to 30% CPU hit and going, nope, not patching, not worth it. Because they've run the threat model and they're not inside it. Like, that is not the thing that's going to catastrophically kill their business, but dropping 30% increase 30% of processor load, that will kill 30% of their capacity, and their customers will go elsewhere. That's worse, right? So knowing your audience, knowing your business.
Yep.
I mean, threat modeling is amazing, but how many times, look, Rob, how many times in our industry have we heard people freak out about something that's relevant to like 4 people?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Like all the time. When WhatsApp wasn't properly erasing messages, people in our industry freaked out. And I'm like, how many people does that actually impact? Like, they're like, oh, uninstall WhatsApp. It's the worst thing ever. You're like, dude, seriously, settle down. It's not great, but really, seriously, like, who's this impact? It's like, okay, if your phone is in the hands of a forensic investigator, you have much bigger problems at that point.
Yeah,
right?
We have our own personal threat models that are a little bit different than the regular average person, I guess. So.
Yeah, well, ours are a little bit more complex and a little bit crazier, because we take in, and when those of us that work in highly sensitive companies with highly sensitive information, or government, or whatever, and I'll be very much more guarded about my personal family information than I will about the stuff that shows up in my mailbox. It's like, oh, good, yay! It's like the discussion about credit cards. Oh, you can't lose credit cards. Really? I've had 3 replaced, and it's it's the last day of January. I've had my card 3 different cards replaced this year already. Yep. You know how much I care? Almost zero. Yep. Zero fraud liability, good fraud detection, and a brand new piece of plastic. The most out of this that I get is an annoyance, because I have to update it where my auto bill pay and stuff is. But really, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just got a new one in the mail too, and I didn't ask for it. I was like, oh, I guess someone had a problem.
It's like, okay, great. Replace the card, move on. It's a highly replaceable piece of thing that you carry with you, and it's like, whatever, man. Anyway,
right. Cool.
Good times.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. So look forward to having you at the event. Look forward to carrying this conversation on throughout the day and probably into the evening.
Yeah, I'll be around both days. It'll be fun.
Yeah, can't wait. So for those of you that want to join us, we're going to be in Phoenix, Mesa in February 28th and March 1st. And we hope to have you join us there for the conversation. Thanks.